Where even is it? It's up there. I can hear it. The audio can hear it, I can guarantee. It is hidden. Hello friends, and welcome back. Now, I may have bitten off more than I can chew this time because what I have in my hands, this is something that has been causing me a lot of grief for probably close to 2 years now. And you all need to be caught up. There is a lot of catching up to do because you're coming into this project about halfway through or more. Daniel and I, we started this way back when, and I had these brilliant ideas that I was going to forge weld a Japanese-style katana out of pattern welded Damascus steel. What we did is we got 15N20 and 1075 steel, we layered them, 8 pieces, so 4 of each, we layered them together, and then we stretched it out a little, folded it once, tried to keep stretching it, and then realized this isn't gonna work. This is too much effort for 2 people without a power hammer. And so I kind of gave up on the idea, and that lump of steel, when we finished with it, it was probably this long, that thick, that wide. It was this short, stubby piece of metal, and it sat in a cupboard for about a year and a half until just the other day I thought to myself, hold on, maybe I can pick up where I left off. So I got out all my old forging equipment. We've got the furnace behind me. Just out of frame is the anvil. We'll see that later. I was thinking of starting filming, but I thought, I don't know, this may not work. I was having so many issues with the steel. It was delaminating. It was pulling apart where I hadn't forge welded it properly. But I got it back up to temperature, and it's coming together. It's actually working. I'm so stoked. So now I've proved to myself that I might be able to turn this bar of steel into a longsword. I'm gonna give it a go. So, to fill you in on the details, what I have in my hand here, this would be 16 layers of 1075 and 15N20 steel. It has been stretched out to about 50 centimeters and 2.5 by 2.5 or so. And then with Daniel's help, I've twisted this God knows how many times, but I have twisted the heck out of this bar. The next issue I ran into, this is not enough steel to make a sword, or at least not of that length. So I'm gonna have to get creative. What I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I was inspired by Alec Steele's Claymore videos, where he basically just made the center of the blade pattern welded, and then had plain steel on either side to forge the actual sharp edges from. I'm gonna give that a go. That's a way where I can stretch this material to go a little bit further and still get a blade out of it. And then I'm gonna have to stretch it out, put an edge on it, and then start working on the guard, which I haven't even touched yet. The pommel, which I've got a bit of metal I might be able to turn into a pommel. Then I need to make a handle, and then wire wrap that handle, and if everything goes absolutely perfectly, I could end up with a sword. Or I could just be another amateur who ends up with a pile of slag. We'll see how it goes, because I've got no power hammer. I've got no real training. I am a complete amateur at all of this. This is the first proper sword that I'm making. And, let me show you the last blade I worked on. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the last thing I tried working on. It was going to be a kitchen knife, and I wanted to have a very natural pattern on the back edge, so I hammered it with a ball peen hammer to get all these little divots and dents in it that I wasn't going to take out. And then I went and tried to do a heat treating process, and I think somewhere online I'd seen that you can just dip the edge in water to harden the edge and leave the back edge exposed. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but the internet told me so. And, ooh, can we get the camera to focus on this? See that there? That's a crack. Further along the blade, that's a crack. That's a crack. Basically, this is cracked. Hello. Basically, this is cracked all the way along the edges. It is unusable. I should just throw this away. But I'm holding onto it as a lesson of what not to do. Given that this is my last attempt, and I'm now moving on to the very ambitious project of making a longsword, we're going to see how that goes. So, today, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be amateur hour yet again, isn't it always on my channel? And we're going to see if a complete nincompoop like myself can turn that lump of metal into a functional longsword. Let's get going. But first, I think I'd better get out of these clothes, at least for this episode, because I can guarantee you, it's not a matter of if these clothes get completely trashed, it's when. That they will. It will happen. Sparks will be flying. So I hope nobody minds, but I'm gonna go casual this episode. So there's not much to do whilst the furnace heats up, so I'm just gonna hang around, wait for that to get hot, and don't really know what I'm gonna do. So at the moment I'm only able to do one side at a time because as you can see, my furnace isn't long enough to take the entire bar without opening the other door at the other end, and if I do that then it doesn't get as hot inside and then it won't heat the material as quickly. So first I'll work on half the bar, then I'll flip it over, heat the other end, and then work on the other half of the bar until it's just right. Okay, there is definitely a crack about a third of the way through the piece, and I don't really know how I'm going to fix that because it seems that the crack has formed where I've twisted it, so let's get rid of gloves. If the steel has been forge welded together like that and it starts cracking upwards, then you can just smash that back down, reforge it in place, it's fine. But since this crack is, if I've got the vertical piece of steel in front of me and the crack is kind of canted upwards on that angle through the piece of material, how do I fix that? Do I smash it down from the top? Do I hit it from the sides and just hope that it fixes itself? I'm not sure. I'm going to try things. I'm going to try things and see if those things help fix my problem. If they don't, I'm stuffed. I don't know what I'll do from this point onwards. I'll just probably continue going ahead with this sword regardless because I just want to see if I can. And I may get a sword at the end of the day that I cannot use or doesn't function. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Originally, as I said, I was going to get this pattern welded steel, fold it in half, and then have a shorter bar which I could cut into the sides and insert strips of regular steel down each side. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have enough material to work with and do that easily, so my new concept is I'm going to stretch this out to about double the length of the sword that I'm going to have, and I'm going to make it quite thin, and then what I'll do is I will wrap it around a piece of regular steel. I think it will give the appearance that I want, so we'll see how that works. I'm running out of daylight today, so what I'll do is I'll prep the steel for doing the forge welding tomorrow or another day, and then leave it there. Alright, so it's a new day, and I've got this bit of steel back out again. I'm getting very concerned with the crack that's forming along one of the twist lines, and in particular, it's just one that's really standing out as a bit of a worry. More work for me, more sparks flying for you. Let's get moving. Okay, well, looks like the weather could be coming in, so I've got no idea if I can keep filming because the camera is not waterproof, but if it just starts sprinkling, I'm just going to keep on going and see what I can get up to. This weld is going to be far from perfect. I probably didn't prep the edges the way I should have, and it's just not behaving in general, but I'm going to keep at it and see if we can actually get it to stick. Okay, so somehow it is all sticking together. I've basically got one solid bar, just going to tap it together a couple more times to make sure that grip is firm. So I'm just going to be flattening it, getting more length but also more width because I want it to be about as wide as this bar. Maybe not quite as wide, but close enough, because that's when I will be stretching it. So hopefully, let's say I've got this much material, but my bar in the oven there is about this long. Well, my hand's going off the screen, but it's going to be double the length of whatever material I'm using because one side is going to be stuck over here and then it's going to fold over the end and then stick on the other side. Anyway, I think my bar is ready. I better give it another light slam. Alright, so I've got this bar roughly to the size that I want. It almost matches this steel here. It's, what's that? Half a centimetre short either side, but that should be okay. Because, whew, that anvil is warm. This is sitting maybe about 70 odd centimetres long, so I'm going to cut this at about 35 centimetres, or maybe about 40, and then I'll have a little bit sticking out the end which I can use for the tang later on. Whew. Alrighty, so it is now forge welded together, and I'm gonna stretch this like I've never stretched anything before. But I'll tell you what, chances are high I'll probably stretch a muscle in my arm, because swinging this teeny tiny hammer, it's not moving very fast. I'm wailing on this thing. Like, I'll just make as much progress as I can today. I've got to leave soon, so it's not getting finished today. It'll be another day's job, but I'll do as much as I can. So it's another day, and as promised, I did do some work on this. I stretched it out to roughly sword shaped, and I have also stretched out this here tang. The tang's not as long as I need it to be or want it to be, and that is the same for the rest of the sword as well. I originally started out wanting to make a long sword. This is well and truly a short sword now. There is no way to sugarcoat this. It's far too small. I was anticipating a 90 centimeter blade at the very least, with maybe a 20 to 30 centimeter handle. The blade itself is about 54 centimeters roughly, and then the tang, I should be able to draw this out to maybe 15, 20 centimeters, so you're going to be able to get a good hand on it, but it is a single hand sword, or maybe even an offhand sword at the moment. I think what has happened, this is nowhere near as heavy as it used to be. Given the fact that I'm having to hand hammer this, I'm spending so much time stretching it out over the anvil by hand, and it is going through so many heat cycles that it is oxidizing something fierce, and every time I put it through the forge onto the anvil and smash it out, I am losing material in the form of iron oxides that are forming. I've been sweeping them off the ground at the end of every single day. There's a pile over there, and it's there's the other half of my sword. It's over there, but it's unusable now. What I need to do is bevel my edges both sides and then put a fuller running down the center. Anyway, back to the forging. Alright, so I've put a bit of a rough edge on this, and I've stretched out that tang just a little bit more, so now it is 1.5 hands or thereabouts, which should be good enough for a sword this size. Now that I've actually put an edge on it and it's widened this blade a little bit, I'm kind of liking it a bit more. I think I can get by with the fact that it is not quite the long sword that I had envisioned, but it will be a sword nonetheless. So I'm going to get to grinding, see what happens, and I think... Okay, that was very close to hitting me somewhere I didn't want it to. Gosh, what was I saying? After I fully sand this blade, I think that's about all I'm going to have time for in this episode. This is running on and on and on. This is a much bigger project than I had hoped for. So we might just have to call this one the Forging of the Blade. And if I can get around to it, I might give you all a sneak peek of what this pattern's going to look like. You may be impressed, I may be impressed, or we could both be disappointed, depending on how aggressively I need to sand this and how much of it disappears. But there's only one way to find out. So I've done the majority of the grinding, and now I'm ready to change this belt for a slightly less aggressive belt. I want to polish up these sides, and also I've taken to rounding over the central spine of the sword. I did want to create that nice edge and have a hard line running up the center, but I was getting very close to sanding down the edges too much, so I didn't actually think that I would have the width of material required to keep honing that edge in and get that hard line. So I've opted for rounding it over. I think it's going to be fine. You can still tell that that's the central spine of the sword. It's thicker in the middle than on the sides. That's realistically all you need it to be. And I'm getting worried at this point because the finish is quite nice, and all it would take is one little slip up and I could take an absolute chunk out of the edge of this blade. It's already started to happen at one point where I've narrowed it a little bit too thin, so there's a bit of a curved in dip. And I've also put in a bit of a fuller, running, I'd say, a third the way down the blade. I'm almost considering running it a little bit further along the blade. I might not, but what I definitely will do is run it a little bit deeper in certain sections. As I've been rounding over the sides, it's created a shallow area up the front here. That's all good. I've still got a couple of grits to go through, so I can do it during that process. Better keep grinding and then I can etch this thing. Okay, so at this point I've gone through various grits. I put it to the buffing wheel, got rid of as many lines as I can, because I'm at the point now where I think to myself, I'm getting close to heat treating. I don't want to take this edge all the way down to a sharp edge, except for the one section that I stuffed up a little bit, which you saw earlier and has gone a little bit wobbly. But everything else I've left as a fairly blunt edge for the heat treating process. I am still very concerned about that, because as I finish the grinding, I've noticed that a lot of those cracks haven't quite gone away. They were deep into the material. I can see the joins, I can see areas where the metal hasn't quite fused together. That could cause me some serious issues during heat treating. I'm almost wondering, should I leave this as untreated steel and just have it as an ornamental piece? I'm very much considering that. But this is the blade, basically complete. I think I want to etch this now. And I'm very excited to do that. So let's see if we can dig up some acid. I'm going to try and etch this. And I think that's where we're going to have to call it for today's episode, because I haven't even started on the crossguard, handle, or pommel. All of my efforts have been into this blade. Let's try and get this acid etched so you can at least see the pattern, and then the next episode's going to be the final finished product. So I've got the blade here. I've got these lovely plastic gloves on, because what I'm using at the moment is a pool acid. What? A pool acid, because, well, you're going to have to forgive the kookaburras. They're very excited about something. So I've got this pool acid here. I don't really know where to get the right sort of acid. I'm not sure if this is the best sort of acid to use, but to my understanding, if it eats away at the metal, it's going to reveal the pattern. It may not be the best acid to use, but if it works, I'm going to be chipper with it. So the way I'm going to apply this is, since I don't have a lot of this acid to go around and I can't submerge it in a full bath, I'm just going to apply it with this disposable cloth here, and I've got my gloved hand on so I can avoid any acid burns, because that would not be the right way to end this episode. Just going to wipe it on the blade, on all the areas that we want to expose a pattern. And unfortunately, since this acid is not necessarily the right one, it could take a while. This is taking an incredible amount of time. I think I need to submerge this somehow. To speed up this process, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap the blade. Gonna get a whole bunch of this plastic wrap. Lay that on top of. This is acid etching on a budget. Alright, so now that I've put some acid in there and it's soaking that cloth, I'm just going to pull up this end. So this is the way I can apply it to the blade, to all of the blade at the same time, without an acid bath tank. Ah, damn! I love coming up with good solutions. Alright, so we're going to leave that to sit for a little while, and then hopefully when I come back, that pattern is going to be nice and impressive. If it's not, I might cry. Well, I mean, I probably won't. I'm sure it's going to be impressive. It was starting to look impressive, so let's have some faith, shall we? So this has been left here for about 3 to 5 minutes or so, and I've been gently squeezing it up and down the blade to just keep all the acid that's mixed up in there moving around. Pull this away. I'm just going to pull away this end, and I should be able to just slide it off the blade so we can get a nice reveal shot. I'm so excited. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we have Sam's first ever Damascus steel sword. Anticlimactic. He failed. Whoa. That is what we are talking about. I am so happy with it. Oh my god. I could never have guessed that that pattern would look like that. Wow. I am super impressed. I thought that this pattern was going to be an absolute sham because I barely used any layers in this. I think the steel started out with 8 layers. It got folded once to 16. It got stretched out, and then it got twisted about 10, 15 times, and then it only got folded over on itself once. So, wow. Whenever you see videos saying, oh, I made a Damascus steel sword, it's like, oh, 30 layers, 60 layers, 120 layers. But this folding pattern, this has actually ended up with a very, very nice blade without too many folds required. Yep, this makes a very happy Sam, and I think I've decided I don't think I can forge this. I don't think I can heat treat this. The risk of this falling apart and absolutely shattering my dreams is too real. I think I have to leave it as it is. But look at that. I could not be more pleased. Can you tell? Can you tell that I am pleased? Waha! So, that is how some complete amateur can make a Damascus steel blade. And it is, I've said this so many times in the project thus far, far from perfect. Cannot stress that enough. And I have decided I don't think I can heat treat this blade. It's got some cracking up by the tip that I didn't even know existed up until just recently. All the way along the blade, there's some delaminations forming. So I think I'm just going to have to be happy with this as an ornamental piece, which is fine by me. For the first blade that I've ever made, I really was not expecting to conquer Middle Earth with this thing. It just needs to look pretty, and it does. I'm completely blown away by this pattern. I didn't even expect it to be that good. I love how it's got areas where the pattern's real condensed down and then it stretches out and then that repeats down the length of the blade. But that's all I have time for at the moment. The rest of the fittings are on their way. I'm gonna have to do the cross guard, and now I'm tossing up whether or not I want to change the design that I originally had in mind, but I'll come up with something. The handle, I still want to wire wrap that, and then I want a nice semi-ornate pommel, but I don't want to make my life too difficult. And also I don't have much of this tang to work with, so I'm going to have to make some concessions. This is going to be a one-hand sword, 1.5 at an absolute stretch. Overall, very happy with how this project is turning out. So part 2 should be the completion of the blade with all of the bits and pieces, and then I want to start doing a couple more blacksmithing style videos. I want to embark even on a Skyrim trek where I work my way up from iron to Daedric weaponry. That'll be interesting to see if I can even pull that off. So stay tuned everyone. If you enjoyed this video, come back for more. I do want to keep releasing more blacksmithing videos, and until next time, bye!
Take 20 years.
Now, was that okay? Like, except when I hit that, obviously.
Scared the shit out of me.